I understand how the world of emotions works, how it's supposed to work, but I also know that it's not the same.
We prefer and we perform better when we're slightly hungry than we are when we're totally satiated post-lunch.
I want to make people's lives better.
Can you help the audience understand how they can self-diagnose and recognize?
Start inside. Start with what's going on inside of you.
Welcome to Outsource to Profits. We have a fantastic guest. Chuck, do you mind introducing yourself? Tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you serve the world.
Thanks, Jamie, for the opportunity. One of the things that I want to say right up front is the vision I have for myself and for anybody that might be listening to this is I want to make people's lives better, organizationally, individually, in their communities, in their clubs, in their teams, in their religious organizations. What I'm interested in is helping people learn what I've learned about the power of emotion. In the 1990s, there was a new discovery in psychology about emotional intelligence. The first time in hundreds of years where we really looked at and said, hey, there's another intelligence possibly. And I got to work with the pioneers who first introduced emotional intelligence to the world. And I've been working with them for years now, since the 1990s, on helping people understand how important it is to think about and recognize how you're feeling. We don't often think about our feelings. It's kind of like breathing, Jamie. When I ask you about your breathing, you're not really thinking about it until I ask you about it. Unless you ran up a flight of stairs. Then you noticed your breathing because it's labored. Same thing's true about emotions. They're always with us, but we don't notice them unless they're really intense. But what I've discovered over time, in part working with these pioneers and becoming a pioneer myself in a sense, was that certain emotions are better for particular tasks than other emotions. So for founders, when you're starting out, ask yourself, how do you really want to feel? And is that how you're feeling? And if it's not, how do you create the feelings you want? Sometimes you have a wonderful supportive environment that you're coming from, like your family is really supportive, or you have a group of partners that you're working with and you've worked together for years, and this sounds like a great venture and everybody's really on board. But once in a while, something seems to throw a wrench into that, and all of a sudden people are a bit panicked. And maybe one of the partners feels like, I don't know if I really want to go off on my own. I don't really know if I want to be part of this. And if you don't recognize that and you push through that, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So being in touch with your feelings, recognizing what you're really feeling, and if you can change feelings, by the way, which I don't think most people really think about. A lot of people think about feelings like poker. You get to play the cards you're dealt. But one of the things that I've discovered, one of the contributions I've made to the science, is that I've learned that when you recognize that your feelings you have are not helpful for what you're trying to get done, and the science supports that there are certain feelings better for particular tasks than other feelings, once you recognize that what you're feeling isn't helpful, then I've introduced this idea of an emotion roadmap, which is to say, what would be helpful? What would be better? What might even be ideal to feel based on what I'm trying to do? And then what's my plan? What's my emotion-based plan for changing my feelings? And I found 3 or 4 different ways to change feelings. Or maybe not change feelings, but at least change the narrative around feelings.
Yeah, and I would love to dive into the how as we first explore the why or the self-diagnosis. I'm going to tell it through a quick story. I've been a founder for nearly 20 years. And for the longest time, I would look at my day and I would do tasks regardless of how I was feeling. I would do them because I would think I need to be doing them. It's like, being on a hamster wheel. I need to be doing all these tasks that when I look back at them, there's this concept that there's only about 5 or 10 things you do in a year that make a meaningful impact to the enterprise value of your business. And the rest of the things are just tasks. You're just like working like a robot. And as I've gotten older, I've come to recognize that there are almost like seasons to a natural year season. Then there are seasons that happen throughout a week. And then there are seasons that happen throughout a day. And my instinct has taught me now that if I'm not feeling in the mood to work on something that is intellectual property heavy or is very almost like physical in nature, although when you're in the digital world, it's not like lifting weights or shoveling ditches, but it's like back-to-back calls. It's better to actually parking lot those things than it is to go through the journey at 70% or 80% because the outcome will show up. Like you just will not perform at your best. So can you help the audience understand how they can self-diagnose and recognize when they're not showing up in the best emotional state, where they can ask themselves that fundamental question that you asked at the beginning, are you kind of prepared? Are you ready for this? How can they self-diagnose it? And would you recommend, if they had two binary choices, to postpone what they're going to do and read the room of their own emotional state and then do things that are lending to that emotional state? Or can it be changed? And then we'll dive into the how to change.
It's interesting. I like the read the room of your emotional state.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So yes, you can. When I first start working with people, Jamie, you sort of self-discovered what you just talked about in your story. You found, hey, some of the things I'm working on, I'm just kind of pushing through, and maybe that's not the best strategy. And over time, you found some ways to kind of work through that. One of the ways I try to teach people about the point of self-diagnosis is, because we don't really spend much time, again, thinking about our emotions, except when they're incredibly powerful. I ask people, if you really want to learn about how emotions are impacting your day, stop and use your cell phone, use an iPad or something where you record 3 times a day. How are you feeling? And ask yourself, is this how I want to feel? And let me tell you the 3 times because it's important. Mid-morning, most of us start our day with some idea of what we think we're going to get done. About 10:30, give or take an hour, depending on when you start. You might find yourself, like many people do, down a rabbit hole or two, because something catches your eye, somebody calls, somebody walks into your office, and all of a sudden you're dealing with something different. Maybe it's important too. But when you stop and ask yourself, how am I feeling at 10:30, somewhere around that time frame, you often will notice that, hey, it's not how I want to feel. Then how do you want to feel? And you have about an hour and a half or 2 before maybe you go to lunch. Then about 2:30, same thing. Ask yourself, how am I feeling? I'm getting closer to the end of the day. Did I get done what I wanted to get done? Is there something critical I really need to do that I didn't focus on and I want to make sure before I leave? And then finally, when you're home, theoretically home, physically home, but maybe not mentally and emotionally home, around 7, how are you feeling? Are you present? Are you really in your home if you have loved ones at home, family? Or are you still thinking about work and what you got to do tomorrow or what you did today? And you'll learn a lot about yourself. Watch yourself for a couple of weeks and you'll learn a tremendous amount that will help you to know what you're feeling and to be more in touch with that and see how it's impacting your life.
Okay. So I love the 3 check-ins. Now I've discovered it's 10:30. It was only a week or 2 ago. I was talking with friends about this. We prefer and we perform better when we're slightly hungry than we are when we're totally satiated post lunch. I noticed this. I'm a competitive water skier. I actually prefer to be on the dock ready to ski a little bit hungry. I don't know if there's like a fire in my belly, but if I were to eat lunch and then ski, I'm a disaster. So the question is, it's now 10:30 or maybe it's the post-lunch check-in and you're not feeling up to task. But then you come to realize you've got some of these things that you put off. Like you were supposed to work on this deep thinking, intellectual property work. And you're just like, oh my God, kind of pulling out your hair. Or maybe it's a back-to-back sales calls, but you don't want to blow these opportunities. So how do you change? If you needed to change to get the work done?
So great question. A couple things. First of all, it's interesting that you picked eating because it gives me an opportunity to say that there's a science of emotional intelligence, but the coaching that I do involves the science, knowing how emotions work. In general, for the large normative population, I understand how the world of emotions works, how it's supposed to work. But I also know that it's not the same. If I'm trying to motivate you and I want to understand what's key to what's important to Jamie, I'm going to start with what works for me, like you did. You said you noticed that when people are a little hungry, they tend to be better prepared to do something significant and meaningful. I'm married to a woman who, if she's a little hungry, that's going to throw her off. And and allows me to tell you that as an example to say that I recognize that emotions follow certain rules, but it's not the same for everyone. And there comes the art, which is, who are you? What's going to motivate you? What's going to work for you? My guess is you didn't know right away that you needed to be a little hungry to be more competitive and more successful in your competition until over time you realized it because that's what you experienced.
Yeah.
Does that help?
No, that does. That absolutely does.
So that's where it starts. The second thing you asked me was how do you change emotion, right? So I found three really strong, powerful ways to change emotion. One is the emotion itself. For instance, a lot of us have triggers in our life with the people that we interact with regularly, often with people at home, but also at times with people at work. Something pops up and we land up in this cyclical, problematic discussion where I'm going to say certain things that I know I'm going to say. You're going to say certain things, and then we're done, and nothing really has happened that is meaningful or positive, and we both feel lousy about it. So when you recognize that you have certain triggers, and a trigger comes up, and you've become disciplined about this, so you've learned a little bit about it. I mean, it doesn't just happen automatically. I can't just say this to you and you're going to be better at it. But you can learn how to practice this and get better at it. And you can begin to tell yourself, I recognize you, old friend, when the trigger appears, but we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And lighten it up a bit and enjoy the fact that you now are more in control of your emotions, perhaps around this one thing than you were before. So that's an example of trying to change the emotion. The other is sometimes you can't change the emotion, but you can change the narrative. I get advice and information from some of the most brilliant people in the world that I've worked with over time, but I also pick it up anywhere and everywhere. One time, somebody had asked me about what's it like to talk about politics at work today. Not a good idea for most people. But when you do it, one of the things that I've learned was to ask a series of questions. If a discussion is happening and you feel like you want to say something, there's three rules that I found that are useful in terms of managing your emotions. One is to ask yourself, is this really important to say? Number one. Second question is it important to say by me? And the third question is it important to say by me now? Mm-hmm. And that came from Craig Ferguson, a Scottish comedian who said that it took him 3 marriages to learn that. But it can come from anywhere. So I think it's the idea of trying to be smarter about how you manage what's going on inside yourself is the best help that anybody listening to this can have. Most of us think we want to change somebody else. And it's great if we can do that. And experts, people that get really good at this, I can influence how people feel. I know that. But the biggest and most important and powerful message I can give you is start inside. Start with what's going on inside of you. See if you can change what's happening inside of you. And so you have more control, because that leads to more inner peace, I feel.
This is fantastic. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about emotional intelligence, your coaching, and so forth?
Well, it's interesting. I just started live streaming on YouTube. And anybody that wants to watch me, I have people call in. And they call in with all kinds of life problems. In my own heart, I hope that it's senior people with large organizations, because if I can impact somebody who has a large group of people working for them, it's a tremendous ripple effect. You throw the pebble in the pond and it ripples out everywhere. But I'm happy to help anybody that calls. Somebody who's homeless, it doesn't matter to me. I enjoy helping people and making people's lives better. And the important thing about the live stream is that when I'm helping people, I want people to learn the methodology I've created working with the pioneers in the field. The methodology is quite simple. Let me share it with you quick. I ask you to tell me a little bit about your circumstance and situation. Don't tell me the whole novel. I just need a summary. Then I want to say, how are you feeling? And how is the other person that might be key feeling? Sometimes it's just internal. Sometimes it's a conflict we have inside ourselves, but lots of times it's with other people. So I ask you, is there anybody else that's key? How is he or she or they feeling? Then I ask, what would be ideal to feel for you and for them? And I help you with all this. And then how do we get there? And when we've got strategies and plans we talk about, I then ask two really critical questions. Is this really something that you're able to do? Sometimes it takes time. It might take energy. It might take money. It may take skills. Do you really have everything you need to make this happen? Number one. If you say yes to that, the second question is, are you willing? Because sometimes it's amazing that people have opportunities to do things and get it done the way that they need to get it done, but they won't choose to do it because something inside them attitudinally isn't right. And I've learned not to argue with that. When you say, no, I can't go down that road, even though it seems like then we got to try and find something else. Once you can say, yes, I'm able, and yes, I'm actually excited to do it, you got what I call an emotion-based plan that has a fair chance to work. And within 15 minutes, I can almost help anybody move from something where they're stuck and feeling kind of hopeless to feeling like they're having fun talking about it and they're hopeful. Oh, if they want to reach me, emotionroadmap.com, but also on YouTube. I'll tell you, October 28th, I don't know when this is going to be broadcast, but October 28th, I'm going to try and be on every other Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And people can listen and watch and see it real time. I have really interesting callers. I never know who's going to call. It's very exciting for me. I do it as a volunteer. I want more and more people at this point for me in my life at this time. It's about legacy. I've learned something that's helped me in my own life. I was passionate about learning about this because I was desperately in need of it myself. And so in learning about how to do this for me and my family, everybody benefits around you if you get better at this, not just you.
This has been fantastic. Thank you for being on Outsource to Profits.
Thank you. Let me just say YouTube, and then you have to type in CJ, Charles James, CJ Wolfe, WOLFE 5 on YouTube, and you'll find me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.